Alright, colleagues, hello everyone. Let's start with the macro indicators. The macro indicators will start coming out for us on Wednesday. The Consumer Inflation Index for the Eurozone and the Consumer Inflation Index for the UK. We can see that the situation in the UK is a bit worse than in Europe and in America overall. In Europe, actually, the situation is pretty good, to be honest. Why is that? Because they managed to get a handle on inflation pretty quickly, much faster than America or the UK. The Federal Reserve will be holding a meeting regarding further monetary policy. On Thursday, there aren't really any major macro indicators to watch. There will be reports from the Philadelphia manufacturing sector and the services sector. Next up is the initial jobless claims. We'll find out what's happening in the real estate market. On Friday, we'll get Germany's GDP for the second quarter and, once again, updates from the Federal Reserve. So, basically, there will be a lot of information and more clarity about what the interest rate will be in 30 days, in a month. Here, it's likely 83.2% that the rate will be cut by 25 basis points. There were some assumptions that the rate would be cut more, but for now, the expectation is pretty conservative. Now, spot Bitcoin ETFs. Last week's data is still positive so far. The spot ETF for Ethereum also showed positive numbers last week, plus $2.85 billion. These are big, actually huge, inflows. In the past 24 hours, just over 132,000 traders have been liquidated. Loans took the biggest hit. More than $500 million has already been liquidated. Little by little, they're clearing the way to move upward. Right now, I think we'll wait a bit longer, maybe about a week, for some kind of drop. Overall, I expect a decline toward $111,000, and after that, we'll start to grow. But when we start growing, there will probably be a lot of all kinds of stuff. Basically, I think it'll keep going up. First, let's look at USDT and see what signs there are for growth here. First of all, we'll most likely be testing the downward trend line at 4.44, 4.45. Secondly, I fully expect some kind of false breakout to the 4.6% level to grab liquidity and effectively scare the audience. Break time equals 0.5s/. Next, based on this, it's clear that for the total market cap, I expect a return, some kind of test of the 50-day moving average, this line right here, which is around $3.75 trillion. Altcoins will probably test around $90 to $80 billion, somewhere in that range. I think Bitcoin dominance will rise a bit, to around 60.25 or 60.8. Ethereum will dip slightly. I don't think there will be any major drop. I think we might go down just a little, to a range of about 13%, maybe somewhere in that area. Others will also see a bit of a correction. There, 7.45 is what I expect to see. So, what else is interesting here? As I already mentioned, I expect to see Bitcoin at $111,000. But again, I'll see how today's candle closes based on price action. If it closes above $117,000, then that previous move was just a fake out to grab liquidity. Maybe there won't be a drop, right? So, it all depends on today's candle. For Ethereum, I'd like to see $3,900 to $4,000, that range. Test the 50-day moving average and only then start moving up. Alright, well, let's go ahead and take some of your questions. Let's see what questions you have. My investment positions are still Ondo, ABAX, Pepe, Filelink, Jupiter, and KAS. So, I'll be waiting for 2 projects from Dima then. Let's go ahead and tackle that question right now. I want to add Métis. We bought it, we'll buy more. On average, it's gone down a bit. It's an Ethereum-based project led by Deuteran's mom. We must have it. Yes. And Hippo was a meme on Suya. I remember such a project, yes. Yes, we also bought it, and it went into the minus a little bit. I suggest averaging. We took it for half the volume, so I suggest doing the same and also averaging it for half the volume. We had Mumu. How again?
Mumu. Snowstorm meme symbol.
This one?
The so-called. Yes, that's it.
Then the last two are 50% each?
It comes to $25.
Yeah, okay.
Well, in general, that's all. So, guys.
Come on, guys, ask your questions.
Guys, hi. I'd like to throw in a little conspiracy theory.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I look at my little portfolio and get a bit upset because it's only in the green thanks to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. A ton of altcoins I bought back in 21 are so deep in the red that, well, it probably makes sense to buy more. Some of them, for example, were bought at $4. Now the price is $1, right? So, even a 4x would just get me back to my lowest buy-in. And it's like that across my whole portfolio. It's a terrible sight. I look at all this and think, it's really not worth getting into alts at all. That's just my opinion. And why do I think that? Because, and what's the conspiracy here? If we assume for a moment that the market cycles are completely and entirely over, and now the market can actually move forward based on, some significant news about widespread adoption, and any future growth will just come with understandable and expected corrections, break time equals 0.5s / and minor pullbacks. Yeah. But still, these 4-year phases, we're kind of moving away from them. And I look at TradingView over the past few years, at the prices of old altcoins like DOTK, all that stuff, which are more or less still in the top. But where's the growth? For some altcoins, I need a 50x. And maybe there won't be an alt season as such, you know? There won't be new all-time highs for every coin. So, in theory, for me, an alt season is.
Think about it. Why do we only pick up 10 coins? And they're always the same ones, and sometimes we just add 1 or 2 more coins. First of all, there's the expectation that Bitcoin dominance will decrease. Maybe we won't drop to 48% or 40%, but we'll still see some downward movement, some flow out of Bitcoin. So, it's just a given that this will happen. Obviously, some of that will flow from Bitcoin into Ethereum. Although, there's already been a pretty good flow into Ethereum here. But previous all-time highs were at around 20%. We'll see some of that flow from Bitcoin into Ethereum. And then, logically, it's just there's a simple flow of capital, right? The way capital moves. So, there's cash. Cash goes into Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes up. Next, after Bitcoin has grown, if I want to cash out, the price of Bitcoin will immediately drop sharply. I don't want that. So I move my money from Bitcoin into Ethereum, and then Ethereum starts to grow. Basically, my money keeps growing in value. Yeah, so it actually gets even bigger. If I start cashing out from Ethereum to dollars, Ethereum will immediately drop. So what do I do in this situation? I start pumping up the whole thing and move into altcoins. And then the altcoins start shooting up to the moon. Obviously, not all the altcoins from 2018 or 2021 are going to take off. Why is that? Because to pump up those altcoins, you need to pour in so much money, like, even to get DOT to $50, you'd have to put in a ton of cash. But there are a lot of fresh new altcoins that can easily be pumped and have money poured into them. So what happens next? The altcoins start to grow, and the capital of those guys who moved their money from cash to Bitcoin, then from Bitcoin to Ethereum, and from Ethereum to altcoins, grows nicely. They can easily start locking in their profits. That's it, they lock in their profits and exit. I just explained, more or less, how money moves around the market. Yeah, so basically there are certain cycles, certain phases. I agree, not everything is going to move. That's why we have a core set of coins that we focus our bets on. Why? Because we've analyzed that there are sectors that, let's say, are super interesting. The Solana sector. Why? Because it has its own community and its own project, right? Next. Ondo. Why? Because it's, let's say, a form of crowd investing, which involves many individuals pooling their resources to fund projects in the evolving world where decentralized finance, commonly known as DeFi, seamlessly meets the innovative process of tokenization, which converts rights to an asset into a digital token on a blockchain. There's AVAX, that's staking models. Pepe is one of the major coins. Filecoin as storage for data storage. So each project has its own fundamental feature. That's it. Something like that.
I'd also like to add that the recent growth we saw, what was it, a month and a half or 2 months ago, a lot of altcoins were doing 3, 4, even 5 times gains, even though Bitcoin dominance only dropped by, 5% back then, right? From 65 down to 61, even 4%. So basically, if dominance drops even further and more significantly, alts actually don't need that much money to pump hard, especially compared to how much is needed for Bitcoin. And basically, as I understand it, I also used to think, that the cycles are breaking, blah blah blah, but in reality, we're following the same scenario, right? So, look at Ethereum, it started moving, even though no one expected it, and 2 or 3 months ago everyone was writing it off, expecting it to drop to 1,000. But it took off. And in the same way, I think, as soon as almost all of us lose faith that these altcoins will pump, but really, we're already pretty much at that point. That's exactly when they're supposed to start pumping. And I wasn't in the market during the last cycle, but for some reason, it feels like the sentiment was exactly the same back then. People reacted the same way and said the same things, and everything played out just like it did in the past.
But sorry, guys, there's one counter-argument to that. Please, go ahead. Anyone who was around in 2018, 2021, basically mostly until the fall of 2023. Back then, the market was made up of guys like us, gambling addicts, and a bit of big players like MicroStrategy, BlackRock, and so on. Now, major funds are entering Bitcoin, Ethereum, and ETFs. Next, we'll see money flowing in from US pension funds, and I think other countries will start joining in too. And this is the kind of money that comes in, buys, and doesn't sell, they hold it in reserve. So, in theory, of course, the price of these products, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and whatever other ETFs get approved, should only go up, right? Because supply decreases, or rather, yes, supply goes down and the price goes up. But at the same time, there isn't that kind of volume shifting from Bitcoin to Ethereum and so on, using the money of these big investors. And their money compared to ours, well, I don't even know what's the counter-argument? The thing is, in previous cycles, roughly speaking, everyone was trying to make a profit and would cash out almost every day, right? So basically, money used to move back and forth, but now the money comes in and just stays there. Then they buy coins, they hold on to them, and as far as I understand, they don't sell them within the funds. Never, right? Well, not literally never. But why is Saylor buying up Bitcoin so aggressively at any price? Yeah, they have their own goal. His goal is to become one of the major custodians, so that later people will rent these coins from him. So he wants to be a big custodian holding these coins, and then people will just rent them from him. That's one. Second, of course, there's this assumption that Bitcoin will be worth a ton of money in the future. But there are certain cycles that are going to happen. I have friends who bought Bitcoin and Ethereum and are just sitting in Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I get it, there's a certain logic and correctness to that. We chose to also hedge our position additionally. So, besides buying Bitcoin, Ethereum, BNB, Solana, we also buy a number of other altcoins. All in all, it comes out to about 15 assets that we'll have. Whether that's right or wrong, I always say time will tell, and only then will we know if it was the right move. I've been in the market since 2017. I remember how it all happened, how everything shifted from one thing to another, and then to a third. Let's just say, it was an exciting process to go through. Now, honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised if in a year, 2, or 3, there's a whole new list of altcoins being traded on the market. How many are there? There are 2 million coins on the market right now. 1975, 20 million coins. I wouldn't be surprised if only 10,000 coins remain, for example, as an option, right? I mean, there are 10,000 coins traded on the stock market. So why not do the same in crypto, have just 10,000 coins traded, and cut out everything else? Is that possible? Of course, that's possible. They could introduce some kind of regulation, which already exists now. Right now, we don't even feel the regulation ourselves, even though it's already in full swing. It's moving full speed ahead, and we don't even notice it. Why? Because big money is flowing into spot ETFs and Bitcoin, Ethereum. Everything is highly regulated there. Most major wallets are already known. There's no anonymity at all. Coins like Monero and Dash have long been delisted, well, removed from most exchanges. In Europe, USDT isn't used, only USDC is. So there will be some kind of redistribution, there will be, but I think that'll happen in 2026 or 2027. Somewhere around that time we'll see some kind of redistribution. Right now, that's not the case. If there were some kind of major market purge, then we'd see a sharp drop. I think there will still be some capital flow here. Again, as I said, this is not any kind of financial advice, just my own personal, subjective opinion. I'd also like to add something about whether funds are buying or selling. It'll be really interesting to watch them when the funds start dumping, when the American economy starts dumping. When everything starts dumping, will they be selling off too? I think the answer is obvious. Of course, they'll be selling off. Crypto is considered a high-risk asset. They'll just be dumping it soon. Well, crypto is a high-risk asset. That's a given, yeah. I mean, that's exactly how it's described. And they allocate 1 or 2% to Bitcoin. So, they allocate 1 or 2% to Bitcoin. The other 98% is spread across other assets. That's how it is.
Friends, any more questions? I had a question come up during the stream. We were looking at the inflow into the Ethereum ETF, and it's really huge, even though we're trending down.
Yeah.
So basically, the smart guys want to trick us all again.
Well, they're selling to retail, right? They need to. The smart guys always cash out in dollars, right? Basically, they only believe in the dollar. They don't believe in Ethereum. They don't believe in Bitcoin. Even if they accumulate Bitcoin or Ethereum, that doesn't mean they'll never sell it. That doesn't mean they'll never exit from it. For them, it's just one of the tools where they could simply park their money. Bitcoin and Ethereum have been pumped up really well, like seriously pumped up. So it's no big deal, to see another correction happen. By the way, we've now reached the previous ADH. Right now, we're at a pretty important moment. We're currently at the level of the previous ADH, from which a really strong correction started. So this is a major psychological level here, after which things got really painful, right? We dropped down to $800. It was a massive drop. That's why we're seeing big sell-offs now. Why? Because there's disappointment that the rate won't be lowered as quickly as people hoped. We've reached the ADH, that's the previous high level. So it's totally possible we'll see some. Well, I don't think a big correction, but we'll probably see a small correction. And the whole cycle is actually expected to last until the end of this year, maybe into the spring of next year. Let me throw in a little historical tidbit about Ethereum. I don't remember if it was the end of 2021 or the beginning of 2022, or maybe even later. But remember how much buzz there was around Ethereum, that a new update was coming out, and you wouldn't be able to print or mine Ether anymore.
Yeah, that was when.
And the supply would start to drop.
Yeah, that happened. When was the last time you saw any news about how much Ether has been burned?
I don't know. I haven't seen any.
See, I get the feeling that even the fundamentals, even for major crypto assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, aren't connected to the price at all. Everything is driven by market psychology.
Yeah, so what's the conspiracy theory? Are you talking about the dates?
Back then, Ether. I don't remember, but it actually didn't start going up. Everyone was waiting for that update, shouting about how much would be burned, and after that, they were publishing burn stats almost every day. But the price, I think, was actually dropping at that time. That was already when the market was falling. And yet, it seemed like the supply was decreasing. So what does that mean? The price should go up. Okay, good.
Maybe there are some more questions? No more questions for now.
All right, well, if there are no more questions, then thank you for the stream.
NHM.
We keep adding to our positions. We're waiting for your portfolio update in the chat. Friends, for everyone watching us on YouTube, the link is in the description. Come join us on the stream and let's chat. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.